The darkness between galaxies held secrets that most species preferred to ignore. Hyun stood at the observation window of the research vessel, staring at the impossible object floating in the void. The monolith was perfectly black, absorbing every particle of light that touched its surface. It measured 40 kilometers on each side, a perfect cube that should not exist. "We should leave it alone," Borum said behind him. The alien liaison's voice carried the weight of thousands of years of collective wisdom. Her species had survived longer than most, and they had learned caution the hard way. Hyun turned to face her. "Your people sent you here because they're curious too. Don't pretend otherwise." Captain Daeho entered the observation deck, his uniform crisp despite the long journey. "The scan results are back. The monolith is older than our current universe's estimated age. That's impossible, but the readings don't lie." "Everything about this is impossible," Minji said, looking up from her data tablet. The mathematician had spent 3 days running calculations, and each result contradicted known physics. "It's generating a quantum field that shouldn't be stable. It's as if the object exists slightly outside normal spacetime. The discovery had been accidental. A human exploration ship had detected an anomaly while mapping the void between the Andromeda and Triangulum galaxies. Within weeks, the collective had sent representatives, and now dozens of ships from various species orbited the monolith at a safe distance. Everyone wanted to know what it was. No one wanted to touch it. "We need to send a probe," Daeho said. "Something small, unmanned." "We tried that," Borum replied. 3 times. Each probe stopped functioning the moment it made contact with the surface. Not destroyed, just stopped, as if someone turned them off. Hyun pressed his hand against the cold window. "It's waiting for something organic. Something alive." The others looked at him with various expressions of concern. Hyun had a reputation for making intuitive leaps that seemed reckless but often proved correct. He had decoded dead languages from fragments, located lost colonies from incomplete records, and survived situations that had killed more careful researchers. "That's speculation," Minji said, though her tone suggested she suspected he might be right. "It's a logical conclusion," Hyun said. "An object this old, this advanced, placed exactly between galaxies where it would eventually be found. It's not a weapon. It's not a beacon. It's a message, and messages need to be read." Daeho studied him carefully. "You want to touch it personally?" "Someone has to. It could kill you instantly." "Then we'll learn something," Hyun said with a slight smile. "That's why we're here." The debate lasted for hours. The collective representatives argued against any direct contact. They cited protocols and safety regulations and the value of patience. Daeho wanted to wait for proper equipment, for backup plans for at least a week of additional scans. Minji ran probability calculations that showed a 63% chance of immediate death for anyone who touched the monolith. Hyun listened to all of them and then put on his spacesuit anyway. The small shuttle carried him across the void. Through the viewport, he watched the monolith grow larger, its surface so black it seemed to be a hole in reality itself. His heartbeat was steady. Fear would not help him now, and he had learned long ago to trust his instincts when facing the unknown. The shuttle's systems began to malfunction as it approached. Warning lights flickered across the control panel. Hyun switched to manual control and used the emergency thrusters to bring himself within arm's reach of the surface. He extended his gloved hand. The moment before contact felt like an eternity. Then his fingertips touched the monolith and everything changed. The surface rippled like water. Light erupted across the entire structure, patterns and symbols flowing in languages both familiar and alien. Hyun's mind filled with information, not as words but as pure understanding. The monolith was a database, an archive, a warning carved in quantum crystal by a civilization so old that stars had been born and died since their disappearance. Images flooded his consciousness. He saw species rise from primitive worlds, reach for the stars, build empires that spanned solar systems. He saw them discover faster than light travel, make first contact with other civilizations, form alliances and fight wars. And then he saw them fall. Every single one of them fell. The monolith showed him 8,192 extinct civilizations, each one cataloged with perfect detail. Their histories, their technologies, their cultures, and the exact moment of their extinction. Some fell to war, others to disease, many to resource collapse or environmental catastrophe. A few simply stopped reproducing. their populations dwindling until the last member died alone on a forgotten world. But it was the patterns that made Hyun's blood run cold. Every civilization, regardless of origin or biology, fell within a specific time frame. Between 500 and 5,000 years after achieving faster-than-light travel, extinction became inevitable. The patterns were mathematical, predictable as certain as gravity. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel 847 years ago. The monolith released him. Hyun drifted backward, his hand trembling. The shuttle's systems rebooted automatically, and he guided it back to the research vessel in silence. His mind struggled to process what he had seen, what it meant, what he needed to tell the others. When he emerged from the airlock, Daeho and Minji were waiting. One look at his face told them something significant had happened. "What did you see?" Daeho asked. Hyun removed his helmet slowly. "A graveyard. We found a graveyard of civilizations." He told them everything. As he spoke, Minji's face grew pale and Daeho's jaw tightened. Borum, listening through the communications link, remained silent for a long moment after he finished. "We suspected," she finally said. "My people, the other collective species, we've always known the pattern existed. We've survived by being careful, by limiting our expansion, by avoiding risks. We thought we were the wise ones." "How long has your species been spacefaring?" Hyun asked. 12,000 years, Borum said quietly. "We survived the danger window by learning to stop growing. We accepted stagnation as the price of survival." Minji was already working on her tablet, pulling up humanity's expansion timeline. "We're still in the window." "We have time." "Time for what?" Daeho asked. Before anyone could answer, the monolith activated again. Every ship in the area detected the signal simultaneously. On screens across the fleet, a message appeared in every known language. "Simulation complete. Probability of survival. 0.000%. The number didn't round to 0. It was 0. Perfect. Absolute mathematical certainty. Hyun stared at the message and something shifted in his chest. Not fear, but something else. Something defiant. He thought about all those dead civilizations, all those species that had tried to survive and failed. He thought about humanity's history, their wars and disasters and stubborn refusal to accept inevitable defeat. "No," he said softly. "What?" Minji looked at him. "No," Hyun repeated, louder this time. "I don't accept that. 0% means it's calculated every possibility and found no path to survival, but calculations assume predictable behavior." Daeho understood first. A slow smile crossed his face. "And humans are not predictable." "The monolith has seen 8,192 civilizations," Hyun said, his voice steady now. "It's learned how species respond to threats, how they make decisions, how they choose survival strategies. But it hasn't seen us yet." "Not really." Borum's voice came through with concern. "Hyun, the math doesn't lie. If every other species failed, then we'll be the first that doesn't," Hyun interrupted. "Or we'll be extinction number 8,193. But we'll fail our own way on our own terms." He turned to Daeho. "Captain, I need you to send a message to Earth. Tell them what we found. Tell them the odds. And tell them we're not coming home until we figure out how to change those odds." The captain nodded. "They'll think we're crazy." "Good," Hyun said. "Crazy is unpredictable." The news spread through human space like a shockwave. Within 72 hours, every colony, station, and settlement knew about the monolith and its database of extinction. The reaction was not what the collective expected. Jiwon stood before the cameras in her modest apartment on Mars, her philosophy lectures having prepared her for this exact moment without her knowing it. She wore simple clothes and spoke in plain language that anyone could understand. "They say we're going to die," she began. "They say it's mathematics that 8,192 civilizations have tried to survive and all of them failed. They say the universe itself has laws that make our extinction inevitable." She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "And I say, so what?" The video went viral within hours. Across human space, people stopped to listen. "The collective species survived by giving up," Jiwon continued. "They looked at the danger and chose safety. They stopped exploring, stopped expanding, stopped taking risks. They're still alive, yes, but are they living? They've had 12,000 years of existence, and what have they done with it? They've maintained. They've preserved. They've existed." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Humans have been in space for 847 years. In that time, we've colonized 73 worlds. We've met 16 alien species. We've fought wars, made peace, built cities, written symphonies, painted masterpieces, and yes, we've made terrible mistakes. We've lived more in 8 centuries than the collective has in 12 millennia. Her voice softened but lost none of its conviction. If we have 500 more years or 5,000, I'd rather spend them reaching for the impossible than hiding from the inevitable. The monolith says we'll fail. Maybe we will. But we'll fail trying to touch the stars, not cowering in the dark. The broadcast ended, but its impact continued. Governments scrambled to respond. Some human colonies declared they would follow the collective's advice and limit their expansion. Others doubled down on risky exploration projects. Earth itself split politically, with younger generations largely rejecting the idea of cautious survival. Admiral Su-hyun called an emergency meeting of the Defense Fleet commanders. The holographic conference room filled with faces showing various degrees of concern and determination. "We need a unified response," Su-hyun said. "Half our colonies want to shut down expansion. The other half want to accelerate it. If we fracture now, we'll tear ourselves apart before the monolith's predictions even matter." Commander Taeyong spoke up. "The math is sound, Admiral. I've reviewed Minji's analysis. Every civilization that pushed forward died. The ones that survived did so by accepting limits. Survived to do what?" Another commander shot back. "Exist forever in stasis? That's not survival, that's a slow death." The argument escalated quickly. Su-hyun let it continue for exactly 5 minutes before slamming her hand on the table, the sound echoing through the holographic space. "Enough. We're not making this decision in one meeting, but I will say this. The Defense Fleet will continue to protect human space, all of it. Whether colonies choose expansion or conservation, they'll do so with our protection. We don't abandon our people for following their conscience." Meanwhile, back at the monolith, Yuna made a discovery that changed everything. The young programmer had been studying the monolith's interface for weeks, treating it like any other computer system. Most researchers approached it as an alien artifact. Yuna approached it as code. "It's running simulations," she told Hyun, her fingers dancing across her tablet. "Not just storing data. Active simulations. Millions of them." Hyun set down his coffee. "Simulations of what?" "Us, humanity. It's running through scenarios. Different choices we might make, different paths we might take. And Hyun, every single simulation ends the same way." She pulled up a visualization. Hyun watched as countless branching paths of possibility spread across the screen, each representing a different future for humanity. They split and divided, showing different decisions, different technologies, different social structures, but every single branch ended in the same place, extinction. "How far out do these simulations run?" Hyun asked. "Most end within 100 to 200 years. A few stretch to 500. None go beyond that." Hyun studied the patterns. "Show me the survival simulations. The ones where we make it past the danger window." Yuna hesitated. "There aren't any. None. Zero. Out of millions of simulations, not a single timeline shows humanity surviving past the critical period." Hyun leaned back, processing this. "What's our longest survival scenario? What future gives us the most time?" Yuna pulled up a specific branch. "This one. 127 years. It's the path where we follow the collective's doctrine completely. Stop all expansion, focus on sustainability, eliminate all unnecessary risks." And then what happens? Societal collapse. When humans stop expanding, we turn inward. Competition for resources intensifies. Wars break out. The timeline ends in nuclear conflict across 12 colonies simultaneously. Hyun laughed, a sound without humor. "So if we keep going, we die. If we stop, we die. The monolith has calculated every option." "Apparently," Yuna said quietly. But Hyun's mind was racing. "Yuna, can you see the monolith's calculations in real time? Can you watch it running these simulations?" "Yes, why?" "Run a test for me. Access the public communication networks. Find the most unpredictable human behavior you can. Random acts of kindness, sudden career changes, impulsive decisions. Feed that data into your monitoring system and watch what the monolith does." Yuna looked confused but complied. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling data from millions of human communications. The monolith's activity spiked immediately. "It's recalculating," Yuna said, wonder in her voice. "Every time humans do something random or irrational, the monolith runs new simulations. It's trying to predict our unpredictability." Hyun smiled. "And can it?" Yuna watched the data stream for several minutes. No, the variance is too high. For every predictable human, there are 10 who make choices that don't follow any pattern. The monolith keeps adjusting its models, but they keep breaking. That's our advantage, Hyun said. The monolith learned from 8,192 civilizations. They were all logical, all predictable in their own ways. They responded to threats rationally. But humans? He pulled up records of human history on his own tablet. Wars started over insults. Inventions created by accident. Scientific breakthroughs made because someone refused to accept what everyone knew was true. Heroes who sacrificed themselves for strangers. Villains who destroyed themselves pursuing meaningless grudges. We're chaos, Hyun said. Beautiful, stupid, magnificent chaos. The monolith updated its predictions that night. Every screen in the research fleet displayed the new message simultaneously. Human extinction probability, 99.97%. Estimated time, 127 years. The number had changed. It was no longer absolute zero. It was still effectively hopeless, but it was no longer perfect certainty. Borum contacted Hyun immediately. Did you see the update? I did. It's still predicting our extinction, Hyun. The change is negligible. The change is everything, Hyun replied. 3 days ago we had 0 chance. Now we have a fraction of a percent. The monolith is uncertain. That means it can be wrong. Across human space, people saw that tiny percentage and reacted in characteristically human ways. Some saw it as false hope. Others saw it as a challenge. Jiwon gave another broadcast, this one shorter. 0.03%, she said, looking directly into the camera. That's our chance. Most species would see that number and give up. But humans? She smiled. We've built entire civilizations on worse odds. Our ancestors crossed oceans in wooden boats. They flew to the moon with computers less powerful than our watches. They survived ice ages and plagues and wars. And they did it all without knowing their odds of success. She stood up, her voice rising. The monolith has given us something precious, a challenge. It says we can't win. I say we prove it wrong. Not because we're smarter or stronger than the 8,192 species that came before us, but because we're too stubborn to accept defeat without a fight. On Earth, colonies and stations across human space, people made their choices. Some prepared for the worst, others ignored the warnings entirely. Many simply continued with their lives, trusting that someone somewhere would find an answer. But in the research vessel orbiting the monolith, Hyun gathered his team with a new plan forming in his mind. If the monolith's predictions were based on logical behavior from civilizations facing existential threats, then the solution was simple in concept, if not in execution. Stop being logical. Embrace the chaos. Give the monolith so many impossible scenarios that its calculations would break down under the weight of human unpredictability. We're going to need more people, Hyun said to Daeho. A lot more people. And we're going to need them to be willing to do things that make absolutely no sense. Daeho raised an eyebrow. That's every human ever. Exactly, Hyun said. That's exactly right. Hyun spent 3 months living inside the monolith's data. He barely slept, surviving on coffee and stubbornness while examining every detail of the 8,192 extinct civilizations. Minji joined him after the first week, her mathematical mind finding patterns that even the monolith's vast intelligence might have overlooked. Look at this, Minji said one morning, projecting a complex graph into the air between them. Civilization 2847. They were aquatic, lived underwater on a planet with no land masses. Completely different biology from Civilization 4291, who were silicon-based and existed as crystalline networks. Nothing in common physically, but, Hyun prompted, seeing where she was going. But when they encountered the same crisis, a resource shortage affecting their primary energy source, they both made identical choices. They both tried to develop alternative energy. They both succeeded. They both used that success to expand their territory. They both came into conflict with neighboring species. They both ended in war that destroyed them. Yoon pulled up more examples. Civilization 891, carbon-based mammals like us. Civilization 3045, energy beings that lived in gas clouds. Different as possible. But when they discovered faster-than-light travel, both species followed the same expansion pattern. Both encountered the same diplomatic problems. Both formed the same type of alliances. Both fell to internal rebellion within their alliance structure. It's not biology, Minji said. The monolith isn't predicting based on what species are. It's predicting based on what they do when faced with specific situations. They worked faster now, pulling more data. Yoonji, the xenobiologist, joined them with her own findings. Every species that encountered a pandemic followed the same response pattern, she explained. Quarantine, research, cure development, vaccination. Logical steps. But the monolith knows these steps. It knows what comes after. The economic disruption, the political instability, the social changes. It's seen this exact sequence 1,247 times. Taeyong arrived with security reports. I've been analyzing the warfare data. Every species that went to war did so for predictable reasons. Resources, territory, ideology, defense. And every species fought their wars using predictable strategies based on their technology level and social structure. Hyun stood up, pacing. The monolith isn't magic. It's not seeing the future. It's running probability calculations based on observed behavior patterns. It's seen thousands of civilizations react to the same challenges, and they all reacted the same way. Because those reactions are logical, Minji said. When you face a resource shortage, you look for alternatives. When you discover new technology, you use it to expand. When you encounter threats, you defend yourself. These are rational responses. And that's why everyone dies, Hyun said quietly. Rational responses to impossible situations lead to predictable outcomes. The monolith doesn't need to see the future. It just needs to see the present and calculate forward based on logical behavior. Yuna burst into the room, her tablet clutched in both hands. I found something. The monolith isn't just observing. It's intervening. The room went silent. Show us, Daeho commanded. He had been standing quietly in the corner, listening to everything. Yuna projected her findings. I've been tracking the monolith's quantum communications. It sends out pulses very subtle, barely detectable. I thought they were just background radiation at first, but they're not random. They're targeted. She pulled up a timeline. 3,000 years ago, Civilization 7th Idun 34 was on the verge of a major breakthrough in energy technology. Something completely new, something that might have changed their trajectory. Then the monolith sent a pulse. A week later, the lead researcher died in an accident. The project was delayed. By the time they resumed, political conditions had changed. The breakthrough never happened. That could be coincidence, Taeyong said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have 47 examples, Yuna replied. 47 times across different civilizations where the monolith sent a pulse right before a potentially game-changing event. And every time something went wrong. An accident, a political crisis, a natural disaster, always just enough to push the civilization back onto a predictable path. Hyun felt cold. It's not just calculating our extinction. It's ensuring it, but why? Unji asked. What's the purpose? Minji was already working through the implications. Control. If you can predict how a civilization will respond to any situation, you can guide them. Make them think they're making free choices while actually steering them toward specific outcomes. The collective. Borum's voice came through the communication system. She had been listening the entire time. You think the monolith guided my people toward stagnation? I think it guided you toward survival, Hyun said gently. But survival on its terms. Keep your species alive but powerless. Let you exist but never thrive. Why destroy a civilization when you can domesticate it? Borum was quiet for a long moment. 12,000 years. We thought we were wise. We thought we had learned the universe's lessons, but we were just following a script. Daeho stepped forward. If the monolith can intervene, then we're in immediate danger. The moment we become unpredictable enough to threaten whatever plan this serves, it will act. It's already trying, Yuna said. She pulled up recent data. The monolith has increased its pulse frequency by 300% in the last week. It's targeting key human infrastructure. Research stations, communication hubs, colony leadership. Has anything happened? Taeyong asked. Small things. Equipment failures, communication delays, a few accidents. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the pattern is there. Hyun made a decision. We need to talk to Earth. And we need to do it on a public channel where everyone can hear. If the monolith is trying to control us through subtle manipulation, we need to expose it. Make everyone aware so they can consciously choose to act against the predicted patterns. Admiral Soo-hyun appeared on the main screen within the hour. Behind her, Hyun could see the council chambers on Earth, packed with representatives from across human space. Make it quick, Soo-hyun said. Half the colonies are threatening to cut off communication with the research fleet. They think you're bringing disaster on all of us by antagonizing the Monolith. Hyun faced the camera. He knew millions were watching. The Monolith has been manipulating galactic civilization for millions of years. It doesn't just predict extinction, it causes it. And right now it's trying to push humanity onto a path that leads to our destruction. Angry voices erupted from the council chambers. Soo-hyun silenced them with a gesture. Hyun continued, "But here's what the Monolith doesn't understand about humans. We're not good at following paths. We don't like being told what to do. And when someone tries to manipulate us, we have a long history of doing the opposite just to be difficult." A slight smile crossed Soo-hyun's face. "What are you proposing?" "Chaos," Hyun said simply. "The Monolith's predictions work because species act rationally. They do what makes sense. They follow logical progressions. But humans are magnificently irrational. We make choices that don't make sense. We take risks that aren't worth it. We help strangers for no reason and fight battles we can't win." Minji stepped beside him. "I've run the calculations. If human behavior becomes sufficiently unpredictable, the Monolith's models break down. We don't need to be smarter than it. We just need to be more random." "You want us to make bad decisions on purpose?" one council member asked skeptically. "I want us to make human decisions," Hyun replied. "The Monolith expects us to respond to threats with defense, to resource problems with efficiency, to opportunities with exploitation. What if we respond differently? What if we share resources when we should hoard them? What if we explore dangerous space when we should consolidate? What if we make peace when war makes more sense?" Jiwon's voice came through from Mars. She had joined the broadcast. "You're asking people to act against their own self-interest." "I'm asking people to act against predictable self-interest," Hyun corrected. "There's a difference. The Monolith thinks it knows what humans will do because it's seen 8,192 other species do the same things. But we're not like them. We never have been." He pulled up human history, projecting famous moments across the screen. "We landed on our moon not because it made economic sense, but because we wanted to. We built the Orion station at the edge of our solar system, not because it was profitable, but because it was there. We made first contact with the collective by sending a ship full of music and art instead of weapons. And we've also started wars over stupid reasons," a colony governor pointed out. "We've destroyed ourselves repeatedly throughout our history. The Monolith isn't wrong about our capacity for self-destruction." "No," Hyun agreed, "but it's wrong about our capacity for self-creation. Every time we've destroyed ourselves, we've rebuilt. Every time we've failed, we've tried again differently. The Monolith sees patterns, but it doesn't see adaptation. It doesn't see growth. It doesn't see the thing that makes us human. We refuse to give up." Soo-hyun looked at her counsel. "This is insane." "Completely," Hyun agreed. "That's why it might work." The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the decision was narrow but clear. Humanity would pursue what they started calling the chaos doctrine. Colonies were encouraged to make choices that didn't follow standard optimization models. Research projects would pursue interesting questions over profitable ones. The emergency summit aboard the Eternal Question brought together representatives from across the galaxy. The revelation that the Monolith actively manipulated civilizations had shaken even the most stable species. Borum arrived with a delegation of collective elders, their ancient faces showing emotions they rarely displayed, anger and shame. "We have been slaves," Elder Kyungsu said, his voice carrying millennia of bitterness. "For 12,000 years we believed we chose our path. We thought our caution was wisdom, but it was programming." The conference room held representatives from 9 different species. All of them had survived the danger window. All of them had achieved safety through stagnation. And all of them were beginning to understand the cost. Hyun stood at the central podium, exhausted but focused. "The Monolith isn't your enemy. It's a tool. The question we need to answer is, who built it and why?" Minji projected data across the room's displays. "The Monolith is millions of years old, possibly billions, but it's been maintained, updated. Someone has been feeding it information about new civilizations, adjusting its parameters, ensuring it continues functioning." "The architects," Borum said quietly. "We have legends about them. Species so old they watched galaxies form. We always thought they were myths." "They're not myths," Yuna said. She had spent the last week diving deeper into the Monolith's core systems. "I found communication protocols. The Monolith reports to something. It sends compressed data packages to coordinates outside our local galactic cluster. Yunji pulled up xenobiological records. Every species in the database shows signs of genetic optimization. Not natural evolution, directed development, as if something was farming them, improving their traits over generations. The implications settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Taeyong spoke what everyone was thinking. We're livestock. The monolith identifies civilizations, guides them through development, and when they reach optimal harvest conditions, something comes to collect. Collect what? A collective representative asked. Our resources? Our technology? Everything, Hyun said. Resources, yes, but also genetic material, cultural achievements, scientific knowledge. The monolith doesn't just record civilizations. It's a harvest assessment tool. It tells the architects when a species is ready to be processed. Hana entered the conference room, her presence commanding immediate attention. The former colony governor had become the leader of the separatist movement, colonies that rejected Earth's authority and chose their own path. She had fought against joining this summit, believing it was a waste of time, but the monolith's revelations had changed her mind. So we're all dead anyway, Hana said bluntly. The architects will come whether we're predictable or chaotic. Fighting the monolith just speeds up the timeline. Maybe, Hyun said, or maybe we've made ourselves unprofitable. He pulled up new data from Yuna's analysis. The monolith's prediction accuracy for humanity is now at 73%. That means 3 out of every 10 future scenarios show us doing something completely unexpected. For a harvest operation, that's a huge risk. What if they come to collect us and we do something that damages their harvest equipment? What if our chaos spreads to other species? We're becoming a contamination, Minji said, understanding. A civilization that doesn't follow the rules. They can't model us reliably, which means they can't safely harvest us. Suyun's hologram appeared in the center of the room. The Admiral had remained on Earth but was monitoring the summit closely. Let me understand this correctly. You want to make humanity so unpredictable that we're not worth the effort to destroy? I want to make humanity so unpredictable that destroying us becomes dangerous, Hyun corrected. If we're going to die, let's make sure we take the harvest system with us. The collective elders looked at each other. Kyungsoo spoke carefully. What you're proposing is civilization-wide chaos. Abandoning rational decision-making. It will be catastrophic. Some decisions, yes, Hyun agreed. But catastrophic how? The monolith predicts we'll die in controlled, predictable ways. Resource collapse, war, environmental disaster. All neat and harvestable. What if instead we die unpredictably? What if our collapse looks nothing like the 8,192 civilizations before us? Hana leaned forward. You're asking my colonies to sacrifice themselves, to deliberately make choices that might kill us faster, just to corrupt the monolith's data. I'm asking your colonies to choose their own fate, Hyun said. If you're going to die anyway, die in a way that means something. Die in a way that helps everyone else survive. The room erupted in argument. Some species saw the logic but couldn't accept the sacrifice. Others wanted to try diplomacy with the architects. A few suggested hiding, finding some corner of the universe where the harvest system couldn't reach. Hana silenced them all with a raised hand. My colonies will do it. We've been living on the edge anyway. We'll push further. We'll make choices that don't make sense. We'll be your chaos agents. Hana, think about what you're agreeing to, Borum said urgently. Your people could die. My people are already dead according to the monolith, Hana replied. At least this way our deaths buy something useful. Information, proof that humans can't be predicted. Other human colonies began volunteering. Not all of them, but enough. Separatist settlements, research outposts, exploration vessels. They would take risks that made no logical sense. They would share resources when they should conserve. They would explore dangerous space when safety demanded retreat. Soo-hyun made the military commitment. The defense fleet will protect any colony that chooses this path. Earth doesn't support your decision, but we won't abandon you either. Over the next weeks, the plan took shape. It became known as the Chaos Doctrine, though Hyun preferred to think of it as controlled suicide with a purpose. Colonies volunteered for specific types of unpredictable behavior. Some would experiment with dangerous technologies. Others would deliberately create unstable political situations. A few would attempt to colonize planets that should be impossible to settle. The monolith's predictions continued to degrade. 73% accuracy dropped to 68, then to 55. The quantum calculations running inside the ancient structure became increasingly frantic. Trying to model human chaos and failing, Arium, a human negotiator, managed to convince 3 younger alien species to join the experiment. Not the collective elders, they were too set in their ways, but younger races still in their danger window saw the opportunity. If humanity could corrupt the harvest system, everyone benefited. The night before the first chaos experiments began, Hyun returned to the Monolith. He stood in the observation deck alone, staring at the massive structure that had predicted humanity's doom. Daiho joined him quietly. "You know this might not work." "I know. We might just die faster and learn nothing." "That's possible. But you're betting everything on human unpredictability anyway." Hyun smiled slightly. "Captain, I've studied 8,000 civilizations. Every one of them died trying to survive rationally. They made smart choices, logical decisions, calculated moves, and they all failed." He turned to face Daiho. "Humans have never been good at rational. We're the species that looked at a mountain and said, 'I want to climb that even though it might kill me.' We're the ones who heard, 'You can't do that,' and took it as a challenge. We've built our entire history on doing things that don't make sense. And you think that's our advantage?" "I think it's our only advantage," Hyun said. "The Monolith has calculated every logical path, but it can't calculate illogical ones. It can't model choices that don't optimize for survival or success. It can't predict humans who would rather burn bright than fade away." Daiho nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, Hana's colony attempts to terraform a world with toxic atmosphere. They have a 30% chance of success. And a 70% chance of death," Hyun finished. "But the Monolith predicted they wouldn't try at all. It calculated they would choose a safer world. Every time we do something it didn't predict, we damage its models." "Death by 1,000 cuts," Daiho said. "Exactly." Hyun placed his hand on the observation window, staring at the Monolith. Then he spoke so quietly that the ship's systems barely registered it. "You calculated 8,192 failed civilizations. You've seen species rise and fall. You think you understand how life works, how intelligence develops, how civilizations behave." The Monolith gave no response, but Hyun continued anyway. "You haven't met humans before." "Not really. You've seen our data, run your simulations, calculated our extinction. But you made one mistake. You assumed we'd try to survive." He smiled, and there was something fierce in that expression. "We're not trying to survive. We're trying to live. And if we die doing it, we'll make sure we die in a way you never expected. We'll give you 9,000 attempts to study, and every single one will break your calculations." The Monolith's surface rippled slightly, its quantum processors registering the statement and finding no appropriate response in its vast database. Hyun whispered one more time, so softly that only he heard it. "Try 9,000. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the Monolith to calculate futures it could no longer predict. Across human space, colonies prepared for their chaos experiments. Some would succeed. Many would fail. 2 years passed like a storm across human space. The chaos doctrine transformed from a desperate theory into a lived reality, with consequences both terrible and magnificent. Donghyun stood in the command center of Colony 17, watching the radiation readings climb past acceptable levels. His settlement had volunteered to test a new atmospheric processor that could theoretically terraform hostile worlds in months instead of decades. The Monolith's predictions said no rational colony would take this risk. The technology was too unstable, the danger too high. Donghyun activated the processor anyway. "Sir, we're already seeing elevated radiation in the southern sectors," his chief engineer reported. "We should evacuate." "No," Donghyun said calmly. "We stay. We learn what happens when we push beyond safe limits. Record everything." 3 weeks later, 47 colonists died from radiation exposure. The atmospheric processor failed catastrophically, releasing toxic compounds that made the planet temporarily uninhabitable. By all logical measures, the experiment was a disaster. But it was a disaster the Monolith hadn't predicted. The colony was supposed to choose the safe option, accept slower terraforming, follow established protocols. Instead, they had pushed forward recklessly and paid the price. Minji recorded the data with a heavy heart. 47 deaths for what? To prove we're unpredictable? To prove we're alive, Hyun said quietly. The Monolith predicted Colony 17 would choose safety. They chose ambition instead. Their deaths matter. Tell that to their families. I will, Hyun said. Personally. Every single one he did. It took 3 months to contact every family member of the colonists who died. Some cursed him. Some thanked him. Most simply cried. Hyun listened to all of them, carrying the weight of choices that seemed increasingly difficult to justify. But the numbers didn't lie. The Monolith's prediction accuracy for humanity continued to fall. 47% became 41, then 36. Other experiments yielded different results. A research station in the outer reaches began sharing all their discoveries publicly, instead of protecting their intellectual property. Standard economic theory said this would destroy their competitive advantage. Instead, it triggered a cascade of collaborative innovation. 17 other stations began working together, creating breakthroughs that wouldn't have been possible in isolation. The Monolith had no category for that outcome. Civilizations were supposed to hoard knowledge as a survival strategy. Arium worked tirelessly to expand the chaos experiments beyond humanity. She traveled to young alien civilizations, explaining the harvest system, showing them the patterns. Some rejected her message. But 3 species, all still within their danger window, decided to join humanity's gamble. The Velix, a species of methane breathers, stopped their careful territorial expansion and instead sent colony ships to dangerous, resource-poor worlds. The Monolith predicted they would colonize the safe, profitable systems first. They did the opposite. The crane, crystalline beings who communicated through light pulses abandoned their traditional hierarchical government structure overnight. They restructured into something resembling chaos, with leadership positions changing randomly. Their society should have collapsed. Instead, it adapted in ways the Monolith couldn't model. The third species, whose name translated roughly to the Wanderers, simply stopped following any pattern at all. They made decisions by literal coin flip for anything non-critical to immediate survival. It was insane. It was working. Unit tracked the Monolith's response with growing excitement. It's running simulations constantly now, millions per second, and it can't keep up. Every time we do something unpredictable, it has to recalculate everything. The computational load is enormous. Can it handle the load? Taeyong asked. He had become less skeptical of the chaos doctrine after seeing the results, though he still worried about the human cost. It's designed to handle any computational load, Yuna said. But there's something else happening. Look at this. She projected a visualization of the Monolith's quantum processes. See these spikes? Those are decision conflicts. Situations where the Monolith can't determine what will do because multiple contradictory patterns exist. Before the chaos doctrine, these spikes were rare. Now they're constant. So we're confusing it, Deho said. More than that, we're corrupting its database. Every failed prediction becomes part of its learning data. But our failures don't follow patterns, so the Monolith can't learn from them. It's like teaching a computer to predict coin flips. The more data you feed it, the more confused it becomes. Yoonji brought new discoveries from her xenobiology research. I've been studying the genetic markers in the Monolith civilization database. Every species shows signs of directed evolution. But here's what's interesting. The direction is always toward predictability. She pulled up genetic comparisons. Look at these aggression markers. Every harvested species was either highly aggressive or highly passive. Nothing in between. Same with social structures, either rigidly hierarchical or completely egalitarian. Intelligence patterns, either hyper-logical or emotion-driven. It's like the architects were breeding civilizations to be easy to predict. And humans, Hyun asked. We're in the middle of every spectrum. Not too aggressive, not too passive. Some hierarchy but also social mobility. We use logic, but emotions influence our decisions. We're evolutionary generalists. That's probably why we're so hard to predict. The architects designed species to be simple, Minji said, understanding. But evolution doesn't always cooperate. Sometimes it produces messy, complicated results like us. The Monolith's prediction accuracy hit 33% on a Tuesday afternoon. Yuna was monitoring the systems when the drop happened. She immediately called Hyun. 33%. That's barely better than random chance. The Monolith can't predict human behavior anymore. Hyun felt a mix of triumph and terror. What about the other species following the chaos doctrine? The Velix are at 41%. The Crane at 39, the Wanderers at 28. So it works, Deho said. We've made ourselves unpredictable. At what cost? Taeyong asked. We've lost colonies. People have died. Are we actually safer or just dying in more random ways? It was a fair question. The Chaos Doctrine had created genuine disasters. Colony 17's failure was just one example. A research station had experimented with unstable wormhole technology and vanished completely. An exploration fleet had attempted to map a region of space known to be dangerous and lost 3 ships. A colony had deliberately created political instability to test social resilience and ended in a brief but bloody civil conflict. But there were successes too. Colonies that should have failed survived through pure luck and determination. Technologies developed through chaotic collaboration produced breakthroughs that careful research hadn't achieved in decades. Alliances formed between species that should have been enemies, simply because humans kept doing unexpected things that forced creative diplomatic solutions. Jiwan, who had become something like humanity's unofficial spokesperson, addressed this question in one of her regular broadcasts. Are we dying? She asked. Yes, some of us are dying. Dongyun's colony, the research station at Kepler 442, Fleet Group 7. We've lost people. Good people. People who volunteered to take risks that didn't make sense. She paused, and her eyes reflected genuine grief. But let me tell you what we've gained. We've gained 2 years that the Monolith said we wouldn't have. We've gained allies who are learning to be unpredictable like us. We've gained hope, real hope, that maybe extinction isn't inevitable. The Monolith can't predict us anymore, she continued. Its accuracy is 33%. That means when it looks at humanity's future, it sees nothing but chaos. No clear path to our extinction. No reliable model of our collapse. We've become a statistical anomaly. Is that better than certain death? I think so. But you don't have to agree with me. The beautiful thing about chaos is that everyone gets to choose. Some colonies have rejected the doctrine. They're playing it safe, following logical strategies. And you know what? That's unpredictable too. Because the Monolith expected all of us to either embrace chaos or reject it completely. The fact that we're divided, that we can't even agree on how to save ourselves, that's the most human thing we could do. Admiral Soo-hyun reported to Earth's Council that month with updated statistics. Human space has expanded by 12% despite the Chaos Doctrine. Or perhaps because of it. Colonies are less afraid to take risks when risk-taking is officially sanctioned. What about military readiness? A council member asked. Complicated, Soo-hyun admitted. We've split the fleet according to the doctrine. Half follows standard strategic doctrine, half makes random tactical decisions. The half following Chaos Doctrine has a higher casualty rate, but has also achieved victories that shouldn't have been possible. She pulled up a recent engagement. Fleet Group 12 encountered a hostile alien force in disputed space. Standard Doctrine said retreat. They attacked instead, using a formation that made no tactical sense. They won because the enemy couldn't predict their movements. They won through dumb luck, the council member said. Luck that repeats consistently isn't luck, Soo-hyun replied. It's a new kind of strategy. One the Monolith can't calculate.